Hi, Bailey, you able to let everybody in the waiting room? Or do I need to do that? You can, I can't lip read. You can do that, or shall I do that?
Sorry, yeah, I'm letting them in.
You can let them in. You admit all in one go. Let them all in.
Yes, they're all joining now.
Lovely.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you.
Hi, Uti. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
What we'll do. We'll just give another couple of minutes.
Right. Everyone should. No me imagino estar tipo.
Bailey, you're able to do a poll, or only I can do that? You can do that? Only me?
I think as the host, you have to make it. Yes.
That sounds a bit high tech for me, maybe. While we're waiting, maybe I'll see if I can just create one quickly. Ah. Bailey, did that work? I just put a question to everybody. Did you all get it? Yeah? So just while we're waiting, just so I can get a bit of a sense of who I'm speaking to, it would just be great if you can answer for me, get an idea. Okay, so it's really, I don't know whether you can also see the poll as well, so it's really about 50-50, half in Israel and half abroad. Okay. Okay, so let's begin. First of all, thanks so much for joining. If it's possible, it would be great if you can you're able to put your camera on, then that would be I think a really nice thing to have us feel some kind of connection in these unusual times and some kind of sense of solidarity. If you can't, or you really feel uncomfortable, of course, don't feel the need, but it would be nice if you could. Also on the note of practicalities, in this situation, if there are sirens, if I have sirens, you have sirens, or just internet difficulties in general, then do what you need to do, and we'll just wait until you come. And if it's me that needs to go, we'll just wait until I come back, and Bailey, our chat manager, who's helping run this, will take care of the session, and she'll also deal with questions and so on. But this is going to be recorded if you want to come back to it, and I'm going to send out the presentation afterwards. Okay, so let's get going. Just a little bit to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Lisa Law. I'm a clinical psychologist. Some of you I may have met before teaching at Reichman. I teach coping failure. A little bit about me. I've been a psychologist the last 25 years. I've lived in Israel for 18 years now. I'm up in Pardes Chana with my husband and my 4 children, aged 3 to 12. And I understand from seeing everybody and getting the poll that there's a big mix of students and faculty, and also those of you who are in Israel and those of you who are abroad right now. I'm sorry this is going ding every 2 seconds. Hopefully everybody will join us soon and we can stop having that noise coming through. I feel very comfortable. I'm going to go through a presentation, but you're really welcome to interrupt me. It doesn't annoy me or disturb me. If you have any questions along the way, feel comfortable, feel free. And also I'm happy to stay on later for questions at the end or any discussion. But in the meantime, let me share my screen. Is there a way, Bailey, of turning off this beeping every 2 seconds? I don't know how to do that. So if you know quickly, then do tell me. Otherwise, we shall make do. Okay, so the title of the lecture is Resilience in Times of Crisis, how we can navigate our emotional experience in these challenges that we're having at this very difficult situation that we're living through right now. A little bit about the goal of the talk together. This event is an event of unprecedented magnitude. Nothing is going to be normal for us in the coming weeks. People are grieving, people are frightened, and this experience is personal as well as collective. So the goal of this talk is to learn how we can be more present, more focused, and more able to function in the current situation, and to foster resilience to do that. So the plan is a 3-step plan today. 1, what's going on with me? A bit of sort of a bit more awareness about what's going on in our minds, what's going on in our body, what's going on in this situation personally. Then to get practical tools, what can help me? And then how can I help myself and how can I help other people when I'm if we're in a high stress situation? The tools, I've put a lot of tools on the slides. So don't worry if you feel like you're going to forget them or you weren't concentrating, or there's no need to write them down. I'll send them to you, and also it's recorded. So it'll be quite a lot of information. The first part, what's going on with me? So what's ever happening to us in this moment at this time is a completely normal reaction, obviously, to an entirely abnormal situation. We're having this acute stress reaction, and we're supposed to react like this. It's okay not to function well for a while. That's what we're supposed to do. It makes sense, and it's even in some ways useful to us, an adaptive response. We need to remember that our bodies and our minds have the ability to return to balance and to return to calm. Memories and other sensations, physical and otherwise, will become less and less disturbing over time, and things will get easier for everybody. And we need to remember that research shows us that over 80% of people who experience very high stress events will not develop any kind of post-traumatic stress response. And this natural ability, this natural recovery is called resilience. And that's what we're going to build on today. So it's same, but different. What does that mean? That we all have our unique stories as individuals about how what's happened to us and how we've experienced what's happening to us right now. And we all have our collected collective stories. The experience is personal and it's communal, and that's in terms of the experience itself, everything we've been through up until now and will go through, and also the ways that we cope with it. No one is unaffected. And so I thought, as I was preparing for this lecture and thinking about, what is it that could be useful right now, and what makes sense to talk about right now, I thought that in the spirit of solidarity, before preparing this, that I should write down what's been going on for me for the last week or so. So I decided to list some of the experience that I had personally. I think it's always interesting, the saying is so true, the shoemaker, and in this case too, always is also barefoot, or the shoemaker is barefoot, and so was I. No one escapes the intensity of what's been going on in Israel the last couple of weeks. So when I looked at my list, it fits in with so many of the collective experiences that people have, and also different experiences because we're all different. So for me, I woke up on that Saturday morning with my husband saying something really bad is happening, and it was shock and it was denial. Is it, can it be? And then it moves from that confusion to a real lack of functioning for me, when I was wandering around the house, confused, withdrawing, disorganized, just trying to empty the dishwasher and not being able to manage doing that. And this was how it went for a couple of days, until eventually, after the kids had gone to bed one night, suddenly out of nowhere, I had an extreme panic attack. Suddenly I couldn't breathe, really surprised me, didn't know it was coming. I don't suffer from panic attacks. Tense body, difficult to breathe, lasted 3, 4, 5 minutes out of the blue. And generally going around feeling a tightness, feeling a tension in my body, and a lack of clarity in my thoughts. There are all kinds of physical issues like sleep. Just my sleep changed, my eating changed, my senses changed. Things seemed so loud. I've got 4 kids, they're loud. But suddenly they were so loud. Yeah. Food. My husband made some scrambled eggs. The eggs are off. The eggs, they've gone bad. There's a bad taste to them. And everyone else around the table said they tasted absolutely fine. Things start changing in your sensory experience. I noticed I was watching the news obsessively for the first few days. And all of this intense experience obviously moves on to different experiences and different levels of functioning. At this point, obviously, I'm able to speak to you. I'm able to prepare a lecture. And we all go through these ups and downs, these unique but also common experiences. So some of the things I'm going to say now, I've already said. Some things I will say will possibly be very, very spot on, very, very helpful. And then other things I'm going to say are going to be irrelevant, even irritating, off the mark, trivial. And it's the same for everyone we speak to. Sometimes we hear professionals, or we speak to loved ones, and it's spot on. And yes, that matches my experience. And some of it, sometimes it seems so foreign and off the mark. That's going to be the same. So that's because we have such individual differences. Same, but different. So let's think about what we do know, what the research tells us, what we think or what we do know is going on in our brain, and we can assume is going on for us now. So each part of the brain is involved in many functions. We're just going to talk in a very simplified way and talk about a limited amount of functions. And obviously we understand that everybody's brain is different to some extent too. We have individual differences. So let's think of the brain in terms of evolution. It's a product of our evolution. Our brain responds automatically to high stress events. We're trained to do that over thousands of years. So our neurons will fire in patterns that we don't control or decide upon, and we can't think away. And evolution has ingrained these patterns to protect us from threat. We have no choice in it. We will go into, when we perceive threat, we will go into what many of us have heard of: fight, flight, or freeze. We're either going to run towards to protect ourselves aggressively, we're going to run away to protect ourselves aggressively, anxiously we're going to flee, flight, or we might freeze. Either we may freeze to assess and respond to what's going on, or in order to shut down in that situation that's overwhelmed us. Because we have a vigilant brain. vigilance is one of the primary roles of the brain that we have in the brain that protects us by predicting what may happen in the environment around us. We're constantly scanning to detect anything that doesn't fit in what we are supposed to predict. We think that should be. We're constantly trying to identify, not always consciously, of course, potential threats and take measures to protect ourselves and remain as safe as possible. I just want to give a bit of a sort of physical idea of what the brain is like. If everybody, if you feel like it, if it suits you, if you take your hand and put it up like this. I can't see myself. I'm assuming you can see me. Just have a bit of an idea of what the brain is like. If we put our thumb in the middle, we put our fist inside. The inside, the forearm here is our spinal cord. The elbow, the base of the spine. Down here on the palm, the base of the brain. And then we have two very important bits we're going to talk about. In here is the limbic system. And on the top here, particularly down here, we're talking about the prefrontal cortex. I want to talk about those two parts here, okay? So we have them in a picture on the screen right now. So for those of you it's unfamiliar to, very briefly, the prefrontal cortex, this bit at the front here, the front of our brain here, is the place where we do, it's a more modern, up-to-date part of our brain in terms of evolution, where we do our logical thinking, our planning, our decision-making, where we integrate memories into stories in a logical way, and where we control our attention, okay? In this other part that we can see in the picture, represented by our thumb in the middle here, is the limbic system. This is, there's a number of systems, brain structures in there, but let's talk about the amygdala. Sorry, prefrontal cortex, the limbic system here. The amygdala and the hippocampus. The amygdala detects potential threats even before we can determine what to do with them, kind of like a smoke alarm. And then triggers chemicals to react to protect us. Okay, so we have inside in this image metaphor of our analogy of our brain here, we've got the threat detection on the inside here, the limbic system, like a smoke alarm ready to go off. Okay, the amygdala. Once a threat is identified, also in there, we've got the hippocampus. And the hippocampus helps us compare the environment to what we already know. It's got all kinds of templates or maps of safety and danger. How can I assess the threat? The hippocampus goes, well, I'll compare it to what I already know. So when we're threatened, this bit in here, the amygdala, the hippocampus gets really activated, says, right, we're in threat. We've identified it. The smoke alarm's gone off, and we're comparing it to what we know about safety and danger. And all of this bit, the prefrontal cortex, where we do all our logical stuff, is less online, sometimes almost completely offline. Because if we were to start thinking, questioning, wondering, this would slow us down and distract us. People say when they're in an emergency situation, how did you manage to help that person or do that dangerous thing? They say, I don't know, I wasn't thinking, I just did it. Okay. Once the threat passes, then the prefrontal cortex, this bit, can be re-engaged. Then we can integrate the experience, we can learn from it, we can take action to minimize risk. Okay. So in an example, for example, that we might have at the moment, we suddenly hear a loud boom and feel a vibration. Many of us have that experience at the moment. The amygdala fires, recognizes potential threat. Chemicals get released. We're going into fight, flight, or freeze. The hippocampus scans the environment to compare with all its understanding about safety and danger. And then it says to itself, I don't hear a siren. A siren is a map of danger. I don't smell anything. Everyone around me looks relaxed. All this even without thinking, consciously thinking. And once the hippocampus decides this is safe, the chemicals can be released that were released can be reabsorbed into the system, and we can calm down, and then we can process the event logically. But what if it was really a siren? What if we do feel under threat? Then our brain over time becomes more vigilant. And this is what people describe, myself included, that they experience. Patterns don't just go away because immediate threats have ended. We've been triggered. We've learned to become more vigilant. Our amygdala becomes more sensitive. It's saying things to us like, I'm going to protect you first, you can ask questions later. The hippocampus doesn't have as much access to the maps of safety as before. And that explains why in the middle of the night, we might wake up cursing a motorbike because we're so convinced it was a sign. Who would drive a motorbike right now? Because it triggers us. It sounds so familiar to us. And it doesn't even have to be external. Just like if somebody mentions your favorite food, your mouth may water. If you think of something that can be triggering, or if you see something in the media, some disturbing picture, for example, this can also put you into a state of re-experiencing that feeling of fight or flight. It really activate our limbic system. Okay. So what else might be going on with us? There's these 6 different areas that I want to just briefly mention. You may experience many of them, some of them different ones. So there's the physical world. We may be exhausted or actually very restless. We might feel pain in our joints and muscles where we're holding tension, stomach pain, digestion issues, nausea, vomiting, headaches, sweating. No one's smelling that great this week. Issues around sleep, issues around eating, blood pressure going up. For some people, blood pressure going down. Our immune system is lower. And then emotionally, having this difficulty regulating our emotions, calming them down, getting back into a balanced place, feeling overwhelmed, terror, fear, helplessness, anger, just general atzabim, irritability, despair, guilt for feeling bad if we feel like we didn't suffer as much as other people, guilt for feeling good if we have a moment of joy, or we feel okay, and who doesn't feel okay? Some of us feel completely numb, feeling goes, they're in a stupor, or a feeling of kind of being on hold or waiting for something. When I speak to people over the last couple of weeks, my feeling is that most people seem to have gone down one of 2 paths. And I don't think is true for everybody, but it's very common, it seems to be, that people either go very much down a path of fear and terror. I don't feel safe, and it's very overwhelming to them. Or they go down a path of enormous grief. This is just so painful. It's an unbearable grief. And then, just to make matters confusing, there are other positive feelings that go along with this that are really hard for us to get our head around. So maybe we feel pride. Maybe we feel something beautiful in solidarity and community and belonging, something loving. Maybe we're confused by feelings that are kind of physical, that kind of feel like excitement, because there's so much adrenaline going around our bodies. Let's talk about cognitive experiences. Brain fog. Difficulty keeping attention, difficulty making decisions, difficulty remembering things. changes in the sense of time. This sort of feeling like, wow, it's only been a couple of weeks and it's gone so quick and it's taken forever. Or not noticing where the day's gone, or the days merging into one, especially at the beginning. Behavioral changes. Do I notice that I'm using different behaviors to try and cope, but not necessarily, and some things will be helpful, and we'll talk about that, but some things really not helpful. Am I going towards old addictions? Am I using my phone a lot? Too much? Am I eating in a way that isn't healthy for me? Am I using drugs and alcohol in a way that is unhealthy for me? And of course, all of these unhealthy ways of coping obviously make us less resilient, make it more difficult to cope. Oops. The interpersonal. I can't imagine there isn't anybody who isn't on some level struggling with the interpersonal. The quality of our relationships right now are being affected. Sometimes we feel closer, sometimes we feel so distant from other people. Sometimes they're unpleasant, sometimes we're unpleasant. It's hard to keep our interpersonal relationships going right now in the healthiest way possible. And then practically, you know, what is our ability to perform daily tasks like? What's our level of functioning like? And maybe really practical things. Maybe we've lost our jobs, or having financial difficulties because of all this, or other practical difficulties. And there's just something I wanted to mention about the delayed response. I felt like for me, I went straight into fear, straight into this is a scary situation. And then I started to calm down. Other people I spoke to weren't in touch with it at all, really doing. Oh, is everything okay? Really into doing, and then later on noticed the fear. And the same with grief and whatever else. For some of us, we get a lot of energy at the beginning and become exhausted. For others, we're just completely mutashim, like drained, and then the energy comes back later. So for some of us, we have a delayed response. I wanted to mention, I'm assuming on the call we've got today, we've got about 47 people with us today. It's 47 of us today. And at least some of us, I'm assuming, because I'm speaking in English, I'm assuming there's a lot of English speakers on the call, and that's what I'm directing this lecture to, so I hope I'm accurate. We'll have dual nationality, dual culture, dual identity. And that's also something that brings with it a level of complexity in different ways, that we're kind of an insider and an outsider. You know, I'm Israeli because I live here, but I'm British because that's where I grew up, or whatever country you're from. I feel connected, I feel disconnected, I feel part of it, I don't feel part of it, I understand, I don't understand. There's different parts of coping. You know, I really noticed the difference between the way that I cope and my English-speaking friends cope and my English-speaking clients cope compared to Israelis. Israelis have a lot of experience, unfortunately, with difficult situations, with threats. There's a lot of stories and collective stories. There's a big push to cope, to be strong. It'll be okay. Keep going. Whereas people who didn't grow up in this country don't quite know how to do that. It's their first time for many of them. I notice in the people that I'm living with, that there's a movement to not just keeping it carrying on, but also using humor. That, you know, with us British politically correct ones, it's sometimes more difficult for us, you know, to understand the black humor, the dark humor. That we all have our different ways of coping, and we need to be aware of that and understand that and respect that. There may be complexities around identity. Not everybody on this call or listening to this may identify with the Israeli perspective of what's going on, have other complexities in terms of their identity, in terms of how they're feeling about everything and thinking about everything. There's the complexity of global opinion. You know, when I hear what's going on abroad, for me personally, many people I speak to, it's very, very painful to hear what British people are saying or other people are saying. And quite often when I speak to Israelis, it's kind of like, you know, I can't think of a polite way of saying it. That's their problem. Forget them. And it's easier to be able to bear the pain of what's being said outside. There's also the decision all the time. If you have dual passports, you know, I was sent an email saying they're ready to repatriate the British. I know that many other countries have had the same. Some people are in other countries right now. Making that decision is so torn. Is it better to go back? Is it better to stay? Whichever you choose, it's a difficult choice. Whichever you choose is complex. There's relief and there's other complex feelings. So there's a lot to process and digest. So moving on to the second part, a more practical part, after getting a little bit of an overview about what might be going on with us as individuals and as a society, as a community. The second part is what can actually help me, what's out there. And the first thing is, why should I be thinking so much about helping myself and what do I need when there's so many people suffering so painfully, potentially more than me, probably more than me. So many people who need more than I do, or I can help more than I need help. Why on earth would I put my own oxygen mask, like they say on the flights, before helping those around me? And if you've not heard that metaphor before, it's simply because if we don't have oxygen, how on earth can we help other people with their oxygen? The situation is going to take time. We need to preserve our physical and psychological strengths, especially if we support other people. If you're a mum, a dad, if you know somebody who's a soldier right now, if you're volunteering with other people, if you work with kids, if you're around other employees, you need to be able to keep your batteries as charged as possible in this situation in order to be able to support other people. And this isn't selfish, focusing on well-being, and it's not trivial looking to little things. It's actually part of what we could describe as the war effort, that our health and well-being is part of a war effort. That empathy is beautiful and important and will keep us human in this entire and alive in this whole process. But we need to save some for ourselves, and we need to save some for our partners or our children or our friends or other members of family and those around us. We can't give it all away. Okay, so let's talk about how to do that then. A bit more about resilience specifically, or a lot more. I'm going to concentrate on that now. So we already see that the people and society is a little bit more organized right now. I'm sure you, as well as I do, feel this big shift that's happening. The way they're talking about it in the media, the way the government is making decisions about sending kids back to school, the way people are going back to work, the way people are going back to socializing more, and so on and so on. There is a push to reorganize ourselves and to focus on resilience, to have longevity to our survival. And what's important to know that everybody can create and needs to create and must think and reflect on how to create their own restorative path, to have this gradual exit from shock and into a place of resilience. Because every person has strengths, every person has personal resources. Each of us is used to dealing and reacting to and dealing with stressful situations. Not like this, but day to day. And we all react in different ways, and we all use different coping channels. Every brain is different, every person is different. I love chocolate. I can't understand how somebody doesn't like chocolate. I hate spicy food. People seem to love it around here. Every brain is different. Every experience is different. So then we need to understand our brains, and we need to understand what works for us. And it may be different. It may be different things at different times. Whatever coping channel we choose, whatever type of resilience we choose is the right one for us in that moment. Our brains know us, what's good for us. And we can increase our resilience by identifying these styles. So I'm going to go through 6 examples. So you may be somebody who reacts and also copes primarily through the brain and the body, or always through the brain, but more obviously through the body. Maybe you physically express things, the stress, through your muscles, your breathing. So for you, things like relaxation or massage, exercise, physical activity, a lot of doing might be really helpful. I'm going to have these all on slides, so you'll be able, if you don't feel like you need to write it down or remember. Emotions. Maybe you're somebody who uses a lot of feels things very emotionally and uses a lot of emotional expression. Maybe you benefit a lot from the emotional support from others, from writing, from creativity, from releasing through crying, letting it out, releasing through laughing. Maybe you're somebody who's very cognitive. You use your intellect and thinking to cope. You feel the need to gather relevant information, to plan, to use logic, to get things ordered. Maybe you're a very social person. Maybe you draw support from belonging to a group, taking a role, leaning on friends, family, pets. Maybe your belief systems are super important to you. Maybe you need to find ways to give meaning to this distress and suffering, to have some feeling of resilience. Maybe you use your imagination well. Maybe that's how you can ease some of these difficult experiences, using creative exercises and activities, distraction, humor, imagery. Take a moment to look at these and just to notice as I'm talking for the next few seconds, to stop and reflect, what are my common stress responses and therefore my likely coping channels? Am I somebody who does? Do I talk? Do I feel it in my body? Am I overwhelmed or numb, energetic, exhausted? Have a think about what matches you most accurately, and then try to stick to what's good for you, or at least to encourage those channels. Okay. So let's talk a bit more about the brain. We spoke about what was going on in the brain. Remember the analogy here of the fist, of thumb inside the fist. Let's think about what hormones, what chemicals are being released, and how we can encourage the good ones, the pleasant ones, the ones that will give us resilience. So a few ideas here. Oxytocin, what they call the love hormone. We release it when we give birth. We release it when we fall in love. It promotes connection. Interestingly, it also is an anti-stress hormone and promotes an anti-inflammatory response in our body, stress relief in our body, and we can increase it through feelings of empathy, connection, closeness, and physical affection, play, hug, compliment, help someone. You know, the standard length of time people believe that we can will release a good amount of oxytocin when they say it's about 45 seconds. Some say 25, 45, hug as long as you like, but to give a really good hug to someone you feel safe with, and you will release more oxytocin and you will feel better. It promotes security and stability. Dopamine, the reward hormone associated with happiness and pleasure. We release it when we complete a task. You know, celebrate a small win, something small. I did get that dishwasher unloaded. I did feel good with myself that day because that's about all I was capable of. Self-care activities. Eating, exercising. Endorphins, a natural painkiller. They decrease stress, they decrease physical discomfort. You know, people talk about the runner's high. And we can increase endorphins through watching comedies, eating dark chocolate, exercising. And finally, serotonin, the mood stabilizer. Serotonin will help us balance and regulate our mood, our sleep, our appetite, our digestion, our ability to learn and remember, our general sense of balance and well-being. And we can increase our serotonin with sunshine. A lot of us didn't get out much the last couple of weeks. With exercise, with meditation. And there's certain foods that we can eat too. So how about the body? For those of you particularly who are very physical or experiencing it very physically. So we're having this adaptive stress response, and we need to understand and support what's going on in our bodies. And as cliched as it may sound, it's a time, if we start noticing what's going on in our bodies, to actually say thank you. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you that I'm in working order. I'm supposed to sweat. I'm supposed to tense up. I'm grateful my body's working. But after that gratitude and, you know, thanks for the alert, we're uncomfortable. And it's time to think about how we can release and let go of that stress response in the body, because we're exhausted by it, we're overwhelmed by it. So I just wanted to ask you just to take a moment right now, because we don't have much time, just a moment, to reflect on your own bodies and just take your attention to your body right now. And without judgment, to notice where your body is affected. There won't be somebody who doesn't have a body affected right now. And just to notice, is it my breath? Is it some kind of tension? Some kind of other sensation? Just so we know how to take better care of it. And our body does know how to take better care of it, how to release stress. So do what feels right for your body. And it usually will involve movement, but different types of movement. For some people, let's make this picture work. You may have seen dogs after stressful situations shake it out, literally shake out the adrenaline. People talk about after having very, very high stress situations, they feel the need to move. You may need to shake it out, dance, shake, jump. You may not be able to keep still. I noticed that when I was leading up, that was probably my clue that I didn't notice. And when I was leading up that panic attack on the first couple of days, I was pacing. I wasn't just wandering, I was pacing, I was pottering, I didn't sit down. I had a lot of energy, the adrenaline was building. You don't need to stay still if it's not right for you in that moment. Sport, of course, exercise, releases loads of great hormones, releases the stress. For other people, they need slow movements, big movements, strength exercises, stretching, some kind of progressive relaxation. So contracting muscles in the body, you can find loads of examples online, on YouTube and so on, and then releasing them, going through the body, contracting and releasing, returning the muscle to rest. Other people need balance exercises or feel the need to rock. Many people find yoga helpful, for example. Okay. I want to go through some breathing techniques. In order to get the body back to some kind of homeostasis, breathing techniques are very, very helpful. We want to be doing deep abdominal breathing and to be breathing out more than we breathe in. So taking in a breath, holding, and then and releasing. To children, we say, imagine you're smelling a flower through your nose. So it's something gentle and pleasant. And imagine you're blowing a candle out, so it's long through your mouth. You can also think things as you're breathing, thinking, as you breathe in, my body is filled with calmness. As you breathe out, my body is releasing the tension. There are lots of different examples. So for example, box breathing is very popular in Israel. So you imagine this box, as we can see in the picture. You breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 4, then you pause for 4. And you do this, say, 5 or 10 times, imagining this box. For other people, different numbers work. 4, 7, 8, 4, 4, 2, 4. Everybody's different. Work out what speaks to you. Some people need something more visual. There's finger tracing breath work. So as you go, as you breathe, you imagine yourself using these to help you breathe, either to breathe out, or you can see the picture of the box breathing there. To trace your finger to help you focus. Something that I feel deserves its own screen. Doesn't that look delicious? Delicious, but potentially problematic. Check your coffee intake. This is the time not to be drinking double espressos, not to be drinking 3 cups a day. I've gone down from 3 to 1. I think I've got enough feeling of being alert. Checking if coffee is making you not feel, is hampering your resilience right now. Emotions. Sometimes we just have to let ourselves feel it, allow the despair or the fear or the frustration. It's a sign that we are human and fragile, and it can't be any other way, nor would we want it to. And our ability to express emotion is a sign of our strength, not of weakness. And it's important. And it's this fear and this anger that will help us survive, protect us, give us energy, give us determination. And it's the grief that keeps us human and empathic. But everybody has what we describe as a window of tolerance. Everybody has a range and intensity of emotion they can comfortably bear and experience and process. And people are different. Some people have big windows, some people have small windows. But if we go above that window, we're in hyper arousal, fight, flight, overwhelm, dysregulation. And if we go under that window, that we're in hypoarousal, we're shutting down, we're freezing, we're numb, we're disconnected, depressed. So what we want to do is to be able to try and notice where we are in relation to our window of tolerance and try and get back to it. Lots of ways to do this. I'm going to just name a couple and just think about what's going on in our brain at the same time. One they call in the literature, name it to tame it. Going back to our picture of the brain here. We spoke before about the limbic system in here and the prefrontal cortex at the front here on the outside. When we go into fight or flight hyperarousal or even hypoarousal, this is what's activated. For kids, we say they flip their lid. It's like the prefrontal cortex, the thinking's offline, and this is what's activating, steering the ship. And we want to be able to get this part online. And one of the ways that we can do that, moving from this limbic, emotional, survival place in the brain to a place that's more cognitive, more about thinking, so we can manage the situation. With kids, we talk about the prefrontal cortex up here, hugging the amygdala, bringing it back online. And by naming what's going on, okay, this is what is happening to me. I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling sad. Naming emotions. It brings higher level processing. By using words, we're bringing it back online. And I'm going to give you some other examples later of, in a few slides of other cognitive techniques as well. So we're going from the emotional to thinking, from emotion to thinking. So that is going from the sort of the inside, the back of the brain, really, the more basic stuff, to the front of the brain, going back to front. I want to talk about this too, from right to left. The left side of the brain is focused on logic, order, sequence, storytelling in general. In general, the right side of the brain is more about emotion and creativity. So when there's big right brain emotions that we're all having the last couple of weeks that are overwhelming us, actually, if we use our left brain to tell a story about what's happening and try and make sense of what's happening, then we feel more control. There's an integration between right and left, as we've tried to get the integration between back and front with this picture on the right. On this picture on the left, we're trying to get the integration between right and left. So moving from experience to story, this idea of name it to tame it, noticing what's happening to me. I'm not in my window. I am feeling tense. I'm feeling anxious. This is why I'm making a story. And we give it sequence. The siren went off. I was watching TV. The siren went off. I went to protect myself in the mamad. The siren, and nothing. There was no damage. I'm fine. I'm safe. 10 minutes has gone past. I'm now watching TV again, giving sequence with a beginning, a middle, and an end, before and after the stressful situation. Going from experience to story. If that is difficult, if we notice that we're moving from expression and ordinary human feelings to something that becomes ruminating, we're going over and over and over again, or dysregulated, we're really overwhelmed, we're not in balance, and we're not able to name it and tame it, then we can use grounding techniques to break this cycle. Some examples. 1. Feeling our bodies, so feeling the ground under our feet, becoming aware of it. If we're imaginative, imagining roots from the bottom of our feet down into the earth, keeping me stable. If I need more feeling, putting 1 or 2 hands on the chest or the heart, perhaps one also on the stomach. Focus on the pressure. And if you want to do that right now, just feel it. Put a hand on your on somewhere on your body, your chest or your stomach, preferably your chest. Notice the pressure. Notice the warmth of that hand. Give yourself permission to have a little rest, to let the breath quieten, to bring a sense of caring and non-judgment to myself, to bring myself back into my body, back into the moment. Maybe for me, it feels more helpful to put the hand on the base of my neck to support my head, maybe also one on the front of my forehead to really hold myself and support myself. Maybe I want to scan my body, particularly paying attention to my feet, and get myself back in the moment. Maybe I want to try the butterfly hug. I always think this woman just looks so relaxed and encouraging, and she makes me want to calm down looking at her. Here she is showing us the butterfly technique, butterfly hug. This is activating both sides of the body, both sides of the brain. Research shows that it helps. It really does help some people. If this suits you, try that. Slowly, gently. They say about 25 times is good, or whatever feels right. Maybe you need something more sensory and more cognitive. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. Get me back in this moment. Get this bit online. Get out of the activated amygdala situation and into something that's more of a prefrontal cortex being online situation. Maybe I want to name 10 objects of the same color. Maybe I want to name 10 objects of the same material. Maybe I want to find 1 object and look at it, focus my attention and think about what it looks like, sounds like, feels like, tastes like. That get me into the moment and to ground myself. Maybe I'm more cognitive. Maybe I'm having really upsetting thoughts right now. Maybe I can't get these thoughts out of my mind, and they're not about planning and keeping safe. They're becoming really distressing. Maybe as my mind is empty before I go to sleep, they start to come in, or images. So it's beginning to reframe. You know, are there other ways of thinking about this? There's a difference between danger and worry about danger. Am I safe right now? Is this helpful, what I'm thinking? Am I noticing the positive? The good things that are happening? The people that are supporting? Are there things that I can already prepare? If I know I'm that person who gets a lot of thoughts that are unhelpful, are there sentences I can pre-prepare? Things like, I am reacting normally in an abnormal situation. This too shall pass. I am doing my best right now. There is also good in the world, and so on and so on, whatever feels right for you. Maybe you need to just focus on other cognitive stuff, word games, number games, card games, memory games, just to get cognitive. Whatever you're thinking, to be compassionate with yourself and non-judgmental, of course. A word about the media. It's been said a lot everywhere, but I just want to make sure I say it out loud. Of course, there are benefits to us knowing what's going on. The information, sense of control it gives us and relieves anxiety. There's also the connection that we feel with Israel, with our friends and family, with people, with society. But of course, there's also risks of being overwhelmed by the excessive exposure to sights, stories, pictures, knowledge, information. We need to be gentle with ourselves. We don't want to be all the time reactivating our limbic system. Are we getting addicted to it? And we're actually on it all the time, obsessively, and disconnected from other people in real life. Make sure we're limiting our access to media, that it's within our window of emotional tolerance that we spoke about. Know what you're being exposed to, in what dose you need to be exposed to it, when you're exposed to it. It needs to be relevant information and nothing else. And of course, by trusted sources. A brief word about the other people in your life. Social support is a crucial predictor for resilience. Loneliness exacerbates distress. We need to feel connection between our personal story and the collective one. We want to be connected to our loved ones, our community, society as a whole. It's helpful, research shows us, to help other people. It makes us feel more competent. It releases stress. It increases our resilience. But we need to make sure there's a good match. As we all know in our lives, there are some people that make us feel better, and there are some people that make us feel worse. And we make some people feel better and some people worse, and it changes day to day, hour to hour, whether it's a good match. Do I want to talk about negative things right now or positive things right now? It changes. Sometimes we need to release, sometimes we need to distract. What if we're in different countries to people we're speaking to? Sometimes it's not a good match, some of the things that we're saying. Are we being sensitive? Or some things that they're saying to us? We might need to check that. Knowing what helps us relax and feel good. And balancing between a functional withdrawal, we need some time on our own sometimes, versus seclusion. We don't want to be secluded. As I mentioned before, our relationships are under stress. We're all under pressure. It's difficult to think with a front brain. Imagine you're there with your kid or your partner or your colleague. You flip that lid and you're just activated and reacting from here. You can't think logically. It's easier to get offended. It's easier to be upspanned, irritable, and generally unpleasant, as I'm sure my family would tell me I am being at times this last couple of weeks. So we need to be aware that we might be expressing ourselves in a very strong way, and our relationships are challenge for everybody who's in them. It's a time for forgiveness, for flexibility, and to be careful and as empathic as possible. A brief word about belief systems. For some people, it can be super helpful to connect with our spirituality, whatever that means to us. If prayer or any spiritual method, not necessarily religious, is important to you and it's helped you in the past, this is the time to bring it back. Say a prayer, even if it's nothing to do with religion or belief or faith. And certainly if it is. Maybe traditions or ceremonies or rituals are helpful for you right now. Maybe a return to nature, to earth, to get into a garden or a park or just outside. To search for meaning. For a lot of us, we're having this big discrepancy with our value system. This is big cognitive dissonance. How do we manage all these different things going on? How can we bear it? How can we answer big existential questions? One way is to feel connected to a community, however we define community and whoever that may be, to feel some sense of fulfillment or connection or togetherness, mission, shlichut. our imagination. We all have resources that can shift our attention to positive things that make us feel calmer and stronger. They may be friends and family, nature, certain activities or good places or good memories we may have. It could be a pleasant moment with a friend that we can bring to mind, thinking of a cup of coffee or a pet. But when we think about these things and bring them to mind, and particularly when we ground them in our body, it increases our resilience. This is what research shows. So when we notice, when we imagine one of these things, and do it right now, think about one of these things that give you some sense of calm or joy or pleasure, a friend, a family member, an experience, a memory, a place. Think about it right now. And notice what's happening in your body if you think about that resource as vividly as possible. Does your chest expand? Does your breath get deeper? Is there any sense of calm or well-being or pleasure? Are your eyes more relaxed? Is there a slight smile or a sigh? And using that resource to ground yourself when you're not feeling resilient. The shock we've all experienced is incredibly normal for the first few weeks, but then it's really important to return to routine. This is, you might know this post, this is the original poster from Britain in World War II, just the beginning of World War II, to keep calm and carry on. We're noticing that structures are reorganizing themselves. You know, school is back in many places. Things are getting back to business, back to routine. And of course, we can take our time and do it slowly and gradually and also relax. And it's absolutely okay not to function very well for a while. But getting back to routine is healthy for us. And having those anchors that we notice time in the day and structure. Eating. Set hours, flexible, but set hours for eating. For the survival of this country, of this people, of ourselves in these difficult times, our bodies need to eat, even if they're telling us not to because of the stress response we're experiencing. So it needs to be an intellectual decision to eat, not necessarily a physical one, an intellectual decision to eat healthily. The same with sleeping. A routine, if maybe a bit flexible. Exercise. Also leisure and pleasure. Spending time on things that make you feel good. To mark a birthday, to mark a celebration, to have a Shabbat in a way that feels right now. And if it's hard, just to put one foot in front of the other, as it was for me a couple of weeks back, then maybe we just need to make a plan, write a list, ask ourselves or get someone else to ask us, what next? You're going to eat lunch? Okay, good. What are you going to eat? Give up on non-urgent tasks if you feel overwhelmed. Plan the day in small portions. Evaluate yourself according to where you're at that point, and it changes. On the other hand, if you're that person, and I wish I was, that tidying the house and doing administrative tasks keeps you regulated, go for it. Use that to restore some sense of control. Because it's part of what we can describe as the war effort. To have people who have had the opportunity to look after themselves and to carry on, to keep stability in this country and have people that can keep it going. For the people who are going to struggle more or who are in Miluim or whatever and can't be around to keep things going in that more routine way. wanted to share a meme that I saw, and I saw this right at a vulnerable time, right in that first week, the first few days, where I just wouldn't call myself a well-functioning parent or person generally. I was, milling around the dishwasher for hours. There are some people out there who are like this, these amazing, you might be some of them, that went out there and did it. They went straight out there, they're volunteering, they're raising money, they're taking food, they're taking clothes, they're going right down to the Dead Sea and volunteering with families. They're taking people in. And that wasn't me. And then I saw this, and I read this. You might have already seen it online. I read this quote. I read this post from somebody online. It says, "It's okay if we can't. It really is. I'm inspired by the go, go, go ability and attitude that many around me have. I am also inspired by those who are simply surviving and taking care of those around them, and especially themselves. Everybody deals differently, and it's all okay. If you're reading this, lower your shoulders and take 3 deep breaths, and then go have a tall drink of water. Sending love." And that, for me, when I read that then, was such good timing for me to read it. And I remember just crying and having this sense of relief, of my shoulders going down and letting go some of the guilt and shame that I felt, that as a psychologist, in the first 2-3 days, I wasn't volunteering with anybody because I wasn't together. There's a beautiful quote here that I'm going to translate for the non-Hebrew speakers. It says, "A word for those who feel that they're not strong enough, too anxious, too weak. You matter. You hold the pain for those who suppress and function, the softness and the wounds, so that we do not become mere war machines and we have somewhere to return to." As I said in the previous slide, part of our resilience and social responsibility is going to be these basic things. For some people, they are out there on the front line. They are in Miluim. They are volunteering. They are doing amazing, brave, important, beautiful things. And for other people, it's about keeping on going, and that's also about social responsibility. It's going to the mamad on time when there's a siren. It's studying and keeping your learning going, your career going, your future going. It's giving attention to and playing with children who need to have a childhood and need to be protected from what's going on as much as they can be. So just keeping going, even if you're not able to volunteer, is still being part of this and social responsibility. Okay, into the third bit. Now, I noticed that we've really run out of time, and what I'm going to invite you to do, the next part, I think, is very, very helpful for those of you who are English speakers in particular, because what I've done is I'm giving a few practical ways of managing high stress situations in the moment, and how to help yourself and how to help other people. This, everywhere I look at it, is mostly in Hebrew. It's advertised on the TV, it's in the media and so on. And I certainly hadn't really come across it in a conscious way. Those of you who feel like they've had enough, an hour and a quarter was enough, feel free, I will not be offended to if you need to leave right now. And for the others, I'm going to carry on with just going through these more briefly, or I can stay on later for questions for anybody who wants to do that personally. So how can I help myself and others during a high situation? There's some great stuff online which you can look up. It's also going to be here, so I won't go through it in too much detail. Stuff from Picud Oref and other places. What do I do if I'm in that moment and I'm overwhelmed in a crisis situation? Obviously, I get myself to a protected space. I check if everyone's with me. And I say to myself, I am in the safe place. I'm in a safe place. If I feel very unpleasant physically, too much energy, I jump. I jump maybe 10 times, 20 times high, get rid of some of that energy. If I feel the need that it will help me to release some oxytocin, I hug someone I feel comfortable with for a few minutes. It may be helpful to get water if I have water to hand, and to use any of the calming techniques we've spoken about: breathing, grounding, name it to tame it, imagination resources, bringing to mind things that make me feel better. Okay. What about helping others? What if I'm out and about and there's a siren and someone's not coping and I can see that they're going into a state of shock? Israel's come up with amazing, really, really helpful research about this. It's been around for quite a number of years now. And I know many Israelis will know this. It's on TV advertised. I never saw it in English. I've only come across it now. This is the Israeli version. They call it Masa, I think. And what's important to know that everybody can do this. Everybody, professional or bystander, within 90 seconds can return someone else to normal functioning. Everybody's that capability to shift someone else from passive and highly distressed to regulated and actually even helpful to themselves and other people. Okay? We can help people feel safe, calm, connected to support, and hopeful and more in control, and able to draw on their own strength with 4 simple stages. Okay, I'm just going to go through them briefly. We need to speak to that person in an authoritative voice and do the following things. Tell them that I'm here, commit to them. I'm committed to you. I am here. You are not alone. I am with you and I'm not going anywhere. Then we direct them to action. Okay, so we want to be going from the this part of the brain to this part of the brain. And he needs to be independently active. So ask for simple act. Can you contact your relative? Can you make this phone call? Can you eat? Can you prepare this food? Can you help this other person who's distressed? Thinking questions, moving from limbic to the prefrontal cortex we spoke about. Ask simple questions. Get that person to make simple choices. Do not soothe them at this moment. Do not use emotional language in this moment. That activates the amygdala, deactivates the prefrontal cortex. Speak cognitively, not emotionally. What does that mean? Can you count how many people are here? Where is the nearest mamad? How long have you been here? Where did you come from? How did you get here? Simple cognitive questions. That's key, that one. And finally, a chronological sequence. As we spoke about before, get a left brain. We've done the back and the front, now it's right to left. Move out the right, get in the left. Chronological sequence. Help them. You'll need to ask them questions if they're confused and don't remember. What happens from the beginning to the end, from before the stress to after the stress? Okay, so you're walking down the street, the siren went off, you went to the mamad, you waited the 10 minutes, and now everything's okay again, and you're going to go back home. Help them get that story. With children, obviously language needs to be more simple. You need to get to eye level, make sure you understand. Provide simple labels for understanding. For older adults, they may be confused. They may not be able to hear or see properly in this moment. They may be feeling particularly isolated or vulnerable, and we need to bear that in mind. Panic attacks. What if you're around somebody who's having a panic attack? Assertive, practical empathy. You reassure them, this is not dangerous. Even if we don't do anything about this, this will pass. I am here. I'm not going anywhere. You are not alone. Eye contact if they want it. A light room that isn't overstimulating with noise or anything else or lots of movement. What they're experiencing is the symptoms of hyperventilation, breathing issues, and a fast heart rate, an excess of adrenaline. So you can help that person by counting their breaths, teaching them the breathing techniques that we've learned, teach them the grounding techniques we've learned. Maybe getting rid of excess energy, jumping up and down or stamping their feet if they need. And when it's over, getting them a drink of water and giving them something sweet to eat because their blood sugar may be low. What about helping children? If you're a parent, and people on my screen right now don't look old enough to be parents, but there may be some parents there. Our children co-regulate with us. They pick up on what's going on with us and we can help them calm down or the opposite. So as much as possible, we try and have calm and neutral expressions, even when we're struggling to control our own anxieties and worries. Because they read us, they absorb what's going on for us. We try and verbally, facially, and emotionally decrease the intensity. If we get overwhelmed and we're able to, we try and take time out, disengage for a few minutes, organize your thoughts, reassure yourself about your abilities. Make sure somebody's with the kids or give them screens if you need. Use your own support systems to calm down, to speak to people who help you calm down, and tell them what's bothering you, get it off your chest. But remember, the emotional expression is healthy. We don't have to hide our emotions. We can't and we should not. What we do need to do, we don't want our children to be super aware of our anxiety, but we don't have to suppress the emotion. It's okay and even healthy for children to see parents face stress sometimes, but it's important to explain why we reacted the way that we did. Our children can handle us not being perfect as long as there are also moments of love and connection, and we apologize if we explode or break down or whatever it may be. And we need to explain this in child-friendly ways, of course. Reconnecting with love. Okay, here is a summary of everything we went through in terms of resilience. For people, it's helpful just to have kind of like a mind map and just a list of all the things we suggested and a few other things. If you need help, go get it. There's loads of help out there in English. Iran, you can call. You can on that number 1201, or that link is in English, getting online support as well. The Ministry of Absorption has a support line in English. Natal has a 24/7 support line. I haven't put it on here. If you want to write it down, there's a social worker support line in English, which is 3201. Maybe Bailey can put that in the chat. 3201 social worker support in English. There are also support groups. For example, Get Help Israel has weekly support groups in English with professionals, parents of IDF combat soldiers, support and tools for managing anxiety and stress, bereavement groups. These are all free of charge. Everything I'm listing now is free of charge. Therapy, BetterHelp is online American company who are offering 6 months apparently of free therapy with experts, with people who understand about trauma online. Get Help Israel is also offering free online brief consultations. Apart from that, they also have lists all over the country of English-speaking therapists if you want to go for ongoing private therapy. There is also, I don't know whether Ruth is still here, who manages the student counselling service at Reichman. I'm sure that that you can be in touch with them as well. There's the clinic, it's called The Clinic in Tel Aviv, has some free support and also paid support. There's also someone called the Path Center. Feel free to get in touch with me if you want any more information about any of those. And finally, I wanted to finish, of course, with a slide on hope. That we do have to develop an orientation for the future. Psychology research, especially the research that's coming out of Israel, shows that we know how to help people during and after high stress situations. There's excellent data. This is a terrible, terrible experience. But over time, we expect improvement in the country and in our minds and in our bodies. We have to remember the goodness, be aware of the positive, the bravery, the community, the successes, the connection. And finally, gratitude. The little things of every day that we so often take for granted, being able to get up in the morning, our bodies, the beautiful breeze that we're having in autumn right now, in the fall. I want to finish with something I found on social media that you may have already heard. I've made an abridged version of it and a translation of it, but this is a survival story by somebody called Maya Alper, who was at the Nova Festival 2 weeks ago at the massacre. I'm going to read it out loud. It's not too long because I've abridged it. I don't usually share on social media, but after running for my life, being shot at, and hiding in a bush for 6 hours, I realized there are some things that are worth sharing. Heaven and hell are choices. They are state of minds that we can choose to be. I was in the heart of the war zone, and during those 6 hours that I was hiding in my bush, I heard thousands and thousands of gunshots coming from the villages around me, knowing what the terrorists were doing. I saw the people that were with me as we were running together, getting shot at. I saw the fear and the worry and the amazing strength of the soldiers that helped me get out of my bush and towards safety. In all of that, being surrounded by living hell, so much death and hate, I sat in my bush, smiling, breathing, praying in my own way for myself, for peace and for love. I realized that between all of the bombs, the gunshots and the screams, the birds were still singing. And behind all of the smoke, the sky is still blue. And I kept focusing on that. Whenever any thought of stress, fear, anger, or revenge came to my mind, I stopped. I took a breath and gave gratitude for at least 3 things in my present moment. Thank you for the bush that is keeping me safe. Thank you for the birds that are singing to me. And thank you to me for doing such a great job in the situation I'm in. I think what I'm trying to say is that I don't have any answers about how to bring world peace. But I was able to bring peace and heaven to myself in the heart of that living hell. Because as long as we are breathing, we are winning, literally. So many friends and family asked how they can support me best. And this is how. Stop watching so much news. Be here, present with yourself, with your family and your loved ones. Every time a thought that comes from fear, anger, hate, or revenge comes to your mind, stop. Breathe it out and replace it with 3 things you're grateful for. If you can't be grateful about something in your present moment, it can be something from your past or future. Just give gratitude. Keep choosing and acting from a place of love and not fear. That is the difference between living in heaven or hell. In this picture, it's me smiling from my bush, from a video I took 1 hour before I was rescued. Okay, that's where I wanted. I just realized that we have some questions. I want to stop the share and see who's still left, and if anybody wanted to ask any questions or have any discussion. It is recording, and I'm also willing to stop the recording if anybody wants to speak more privately. in that case, if there's no one that wanted to mention, I'll just check the questions. I've got 2 direct messages. Okay, nothing that we need to talk as a group. So in that case, thank you so much for joining. I hope that it was helpful. Do feel free to be in touch if you would like, for any reason. And also if you have any feedback, if I end up giving this lectures, this is the first time I've given this lecture, if I give them to any other institution or university or so, and if there's something that was more helpful or less helpful, something you'd need or not need so much, then that would also be good for me to hear. But thank you to you all, and take care, and I hope that your loved ones are well. Yeah, so to what?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Laila Shaket.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.